The movie starts in Chicago. Dr. Alastair, the university lab head, gives a passionate speech about their groundbreaking invention. Believing it will work despite the risks, he brings his prototype to the lab without a safety test. Eddie, a machinery student, is working on a hydrogen reactor to turn water into energy. Dr. Alastair demonstrates how to use hydrogen by burning it, and the team eagerly tests it. The test fails, but Eddie remains determined. He goes home, determined to try again. After relentless effort, Eddie succeeds and brings the working prototype back to the lab. The team tests it again and it works perfectly, sparking excitement and a big celebration. During the celebration, Paul, the project's financier, argues with Alastair about when and how to announce their discovery. Dr. Lively, a famous physicist, suggests commemorating the achievement with a group photo. After the celebration, a tipsy Dr. Lively tries to leave but her car battery is dead. Eddie, being chivalrous, offers to help and they flag down a taxi together. Back at the quiet lab, Dr. Alastair and his colleague Chen stay behind to upload their groundbreaking data online. Their work is interrupted when a suspicious white van pulls up. Chen goes to investigate the noise. Eddie safely gets Dr. Lively home and returns to the lab, where he is greeted by a blaring alarm. He finds Dr. Alastair dead with a plastic bag over his head and Chen missing. The reactor is about to explode. Eddie makes a split-second decision to flee the lab on his bike. The men from the white van, having finished their sinister task, remotely detonate the lab. The explosion devastates the facility, destroying 8 surrounding city blocks. Eddie barely escapes the shockwave, surviving the catastrophe. He contacts Paul, who watches the flames from a distance, once a symbol of hope. As dawn breaks, chaos ensues. Firefighters, police, and the press arrive, eager to uncover the truth. Eddie shares his account with reporters. FBI agent Ford arrives to start his investigation. Eddie and Lively receive a fax from Chen asking for all documents. Lively, suspicious, points out that the handwriting is different and believes she's being framed. Meanwhile, Ford confronts Paul about the incident and asks about Eddie, who had dropped out of school. Ford accuses Chen of espionage and includes Lively in the suspect list due to the suspicious facts. The FBI searches Eddie's house and finds lab instruments and the reactor. They keep searching until they find something that implicates Eddie. Meanwhile, Paul leaves a parking lot and is confronted by Eddie and Lively. Paul questions them about the evidence allegedly found at their homes, but both deny any connection to China. Paul suggests they hire an attorney and turn themselves in. But Eddie, determined to uncover the truth, refuses. He proposes they seek refuge at Maggie's place, an old friend. At a restaurant, Eddie and Lively see their pictures on a TV broadcast featuring wanted posters. Eddie quickly devises a plan, instructing Lively to buy 2 train tickets to an observatory where Maggie works, and sends her off in a taxi, promising to meet her on the train. After Lively leaves, a bystander recognizes Eddie and alerts a nearby police officer. The scene turns frantic as Eddie is pursued by law enforcement. The chase catches the attention of Agent Ford and the FBI, intensifying the situation. Desperate to escape, Eddie heads toward a drawbridge that is in the process of opening. With an officer hot on his heels, Eddie skillfully evades the officer, causing him to plunge into the river below. Determined to escape, Eddie scrambles under the bridge. The FBI orders the bridge to close immediately, ignoring the operator's warning that Eddie could be crushed. As the massive bridge descends, Eddie resourcefully jams a metal rod into the machinery, buying himself precious time. Just in the nick of time, he evades the closing bridge, slipping away under the noses of the pursuing officers and FBI agents. Spotting an approaching garbage truck, Eddie hops on and successfully leaves the scene. At the busy train station, Lively waits anxiously, scanning the crowd for Eddie. He arrives with barely a second to spare, boarding the train moments before it departs. Together, they journey to Maggie's workplace. Upon hearing Eddie's explanation about his innocence in the lab tragedy, Maggie warmly welcomes them. The following day brings a significant development as Agent Ford and FBI Agent Doyle attend a crucial hearing. Among the attendees are high-ranking Senate officials and Paul, now under investigation. Paul delivers his statement to the committee, asserting that all government funding he received was used for the country's benefit. However, the FBI remains skeptical of his narrative. Authorities escalate their surveillance around Paul's house and intensify their investigation. The next day, Paul visits C-Systems Research Labs, a place frequented by familiar faces from the committee and the FBI. Their efforts to uncover the ongoing activities are effectively thwarted. In a significant meeting with Lehman, the head of C-Systems Research, Paul asserts that everything is under control and vows to capture Eddie by the end of the day. It becomes evident that C-Systems Research has stolen the reactor, but is unable to make it work. The plot thickens as it's revealed that Paul is the mastermind, providing cover for C-Systems Research's actions. Paul's dealings are interrupted by a call from Eddie, who is using a payphone. Before their conversation concludes, the FBI traces Eddie's location, triggering a pursuit. The police chase Eddie to the observatory, where he quickly grabs Lyle, and they begin a frantic escape. Their run leads them to the rooftop, where an officer catches up to them. However, a helicopter carrying C-Systems Research's henchman arrives and eliminates the officer. In the ensuing chaos, Eddie seizes the opportunity to take the fallen officer's weapon, and they rush downstairs with the police hot on their heels. Spotting a police snowmobile, Eddie and Lyle hop on and manage to evade their pursuers. When the menacing helicopter follows, they leave the snowmobile in motion with a bag on the gas pedal, creating a diversion. Eddie and Lyle seek shelter in an abandoned house, offering them a chance to recuperate and warm up. After sharing a meal, Eddie goes to inspect the garage for any useful items. Meanwhile, Ford and Doyle visit Paul at his house, questioning him about his recent phone conversation with Eddie. Paul insists that he merely advised Eddie and Lyle to surrender to the police. However, the FBI agents confront him about his dubious financial activities, highlighting his use of both obvious and secret accounts. They warn him that obstructing an FBI investigation is a federal crime and inform him that Eddie and Lyle are now the main suspects in the murder of an officer. The following day, Paul confronts Lyman over the officer's death, furious at the decision. Paul reveals he never intended for Eddie to be framed, but Lyman considers Eddie a liability who knows too much. Paul disagrees, believing Eddie is crucial for operating the machine. Meanwhile, at the abandoned house, Eddie works on fixing a broken car when intruders interrupt them. Racing back, Eddie subdues one intruder but is caught off guard by another who starts strangling him. Lyle intervenes, knocking out the second intruder, and they escape once more. As morning comes, Eddie and Lyle devise a plan. They send Paul a bouquet with an encrypted message revealing their next meeting spot. A tense encounter at the museum follows, where Paul admits to orchestrating everything. He offers Eddie a deal to help finish the reactor and return to normal life. Eddie refuses, prompting Paul to leave them to his henchmen. Eddie fights off the men, grabs Lyle, and they flee. The chase leads them to an aircraft exhibit, where Eddie hides Lyle in a hatch. She gets captured, but Eddie manages to evade capture by climbing onto an airplane. He memorizes the car's plates and decides to follow. At C-Systems Research Labs, Lyle meets the team, including Chen, who had been kidnapped earlier. The group demands that Lyle and Chen resume their work, but Lyle firmly refuses. Meanwhile, Eddie seizes an opportunity when he spots an unattended police car. Using police resources, he traces the license plate number of the vehicle that took Lyle to the FBI headquarters. The autopsy of the slain officer reveals he was killed by a sniper, leading Ford to realize Eddie cannot be dead. Ford also deduces that someone as intelligent as Eddie, capable of building the reactor and orchestrating a lab explosion, wouldn't leave a cache trail at his house, a clue found during an earlier search. The next day, Eddie infiltrates C-Systems Research Labs disguised as an engineer. He navigates through a hidden tunnel to an underground lab where the team is conducting a hydrogen reactor experiment. Despite their reluctance, Lyle and Chen are coerced into cooperating, but their efforts fail. Paul and Layman decide to try again the following day. Spotting Eddie, Lyle manages to stay composed. Layman warns Lyle and Chen that their survival hinges on getting the machine operational. After the threats, he sends them back to their quarters. Eddie sneaks back into the lab and adjusts the machine with precision, successfully getting it to run. The next morning, the team is astonished to find the reactor functioning. One scientist claims credit for its success. Paul orders the data to be saved on a disk for cross-checking with university data. His assistant takes the disk to his office, where Eddie confronts him while leaving a message for Agent Ford. Paul admits he knows Eddie fixed the reactor. Layman and his men storm the office, leading to a tense standoff. Eddie demands their freedom, arguing he has given C-Systems Research what they wanted. Layman refuses, prompting Eddie to shut down the reactor and transmit all C-Systems data directly to the FBI. The shutdown triggers instability in the reactor, and Eddie warns that they have only 20 minutes before it explodes. Enraged, Lyman murders Chen, infuriating Paul. To escalate the situation, Lyman takes Lyle hostage, demanding Eddie turn off the reactor. Against Eddie's advice, Lyman orders the scientists to cut the power supply, worsening the situation and leading to an evacuation order. Chaos ensues as Paul and Lyman argue heatedly. Lyman insists on leaving Eddie and Lyle behind, sarcastically suggesting that Paul can stay if he wishes, but that he won't wait for them. As the lab goes into full lockdown, everyone scrambles to leave, trapping Lyle and Eddie inside. Despite their efforts, the guards block their escape route by quickly abandoning the lab themselves. Thanks to Eddie's resourcefulness, he and Lyle find an alternative exit, only to be halted by a locked door. Meanwhile, Paul and Lyman head to an elevator. Lyman's snide remarks about Paul's retirement push Paul over the edge, and he shoots Lyman dead. In his final act, Paul disables the lockdown, giving Eddie and Lyle a chance to escape before swiftly leaving the area. Eddie and Lyle rush toward the elevator, barely managing to breach it. Two of Lyman's henchmen ambush Eddie, but he incapacitates them. However, one recovers, engaging Eddie in a fierce hand-to-hand struggle. When the elevator arrives, Eddie shouts for Lyle to get on. Delivering a disabling blow to his opponent, Eddie makes a desperate leap onto the departing elevator, barely holding on. Their escape happens just in time. As the timer hits 0, the lab detonates in a massive explosion, killing the remaining henchmen and anyone else still inside. Witnessing Eddie and Lyle's incredible escape, the onlookers erupt in applause. And this is where the thrilling movie chain reaction comes to an end. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and leave a comment below. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss an update.